Welcome back to Goan Law for the Layman. In the last video, we discussed inventory proceedings and how they are conducted. And I asked you guys to send in your queries, which I did receive in the dozens. So I've tried to cover as many as I could in one video, but if your queries are not covered in this one, don't be disheartened because I'll be doing plenty of other parts and they will be covered in the next one. So let's begin with today's Q&A. Today's first query is by Mr. Prasanna Wadkar, who was asked, what is more preferable? Is it inventory or succession in terms of time, procedure and money? I would like to know the difference between succession and inventory besides the minor person clause which I have explained in your previous video. Now Mr. Prasanna has asked a very pertinent question. Do you go for a deed of succession or do you file inventory proceedings? Now the answer to this depends on several aspects. First point to be considered is, as Mr. Prasanna has mentioned, if there is a minor involved, you can't do a deed of succession. That is, if one of the legal heirs is below the age of 18 years, you have to file inventory proceedings. Second aspect to be considered is, do you want to keep the property as a joint property or do you want to have your share partitioned? Now, if you do a deed of succession, you will be declared as a joint legal heir along with all the legal heirs, and you would require the signature and cooperation of all the legal heirs while carrying out any transaction. If you do an inventory proceeding, then your particular portion would be partitioned and allotted to you exclusively, and you will be at absolute liberty to dispose it of in any which manner that you please. If the family is too big, it is always advisable to go for inventory proceedings, because if relations get strained tomorrow, the same cooperation that you get today, you may not get tomorrow. So also, even if your relations with your siblings are good, your future generations may not share the same relations. So it is always advisable for each and every generation to partition the estate and get their independent share so that their future generations do not suffer. But if the only aspect that you're considering is the expense involved and the time period that will be required to complete the procedure, then deed of succession is definitely the easier and faster and cheaper option. You see, a deed of succession is a procedure that will be completed at the most within a period of 2 months. You have to get the deed registered and get it published. Within a period of 30 days, your procedure will be completed and you will be declared as a legal heir. The expense involved would be some stamp duty, some registration fee and some expense towards the publication, which would be a fixed and limited fee. So a deed of succession would be faster and cheaper. Now, as opposed to this, inventory proceedings are definitely much more complex and expensive. You see, inventory proceedings would get protracted over a period of years if the family members raise a lot of objections on finalization of list of assets or on the valuation of the assets. So if there is a lot of dispute over which asset is to be included and which is to be excluded, then inventory proceedings can get protracted over a period of years. So also you will have a lot of expenses such as your lawyer's fees, as well as you have to pay 1% stamp duty on the entire estate of the deceased estate leaver. But by the end of this entire procedure, you will have an independent and exclusive share which will be allotted to you, for which you will not require the cooperation or signatures of any other legal heirs. So I hope that roughly answers your query on whether to go for deed of succession or inventory proceeding. The next query is by Mr. Ilric Cardozo, who has asked, it is evident that after the parent's death, the children inherit their property as per Goan law. But if the elder sibling wants to give equal share to his sisters and one of the sisters says that the smaller one has no share, then what happens? Now, Hilaric, this is exactly a scenario when you have to file inventory proceedings. You see, inventory proceedings are filed when all the legal heirs are not cooperating in the common enjoyment of the entire estate. You basically go before the court asking and demanding for your share. So when you file inventory proceedings, by the end of it, you will be allotted a share in the property or you will be given the money equivalent of it. But any which ways, by the end of it, you will not be deprived of your share in the inheritance. The next query is by Mr. Ramakrishna Kamath, who has asked, if the widow, that is wife of deceased, does not respond even after legally informing her for appointing as head of the family, what can be done? Now, you see, duties of head of the family include the duty to take oath and make statements or declarations on oath. So when a head of the family fails to do so, then it is your prerogative to file an application for removal of head of the family and to appoint another person as head of the family. So when the spouse is removed as head of the family, then it is the eldermost child who was residing with the deceased person who is entitled to be appointed as head of the family. The next question is asked by Mr. Hirbarao Rani Sardesai, who has asked where to file inventory proceedings when properties of applicant are situated at different locations. Now, the question as to where the properties are located is immaterial if the person was a permanent resident of the state of Goa. Inventory proceedings, rule number one is you file the petition where the person had a permanent residence. So it doesn't matter where his properties are located. However, if the person was not a resident of the state of Goa, but he owned properties in Goa, then you can file inventory proceedings where the majority of the properties are located. So suppose if he owns 100 square meters in Panjim and if he owns 500 square meters in Vasco, then you can file inventory proceedings in Vasco. So those are all the queries I could cover in one video, but I'll be making plenty of more parts to cover all your queries. So subscribe to the channel to stay in the loop. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.